I recently made a statement for this specific photo that I said it was the prophecies of Jesus, and there was all these connections, and I got it so wrong. And I want to discuss that way more, and I
Got
want
it,
to
Craig?
include my friend.
You made a statement about a specific photo suggesting it depicted prophecies of Jesus, but you now
That's absolutely right. And I want to go through that in more depth. My name is Craig, and this is Morning Star Quest, where we are journeying through the Bible for beginners. And one of those things is contradictions in the Bible. And also, I made this statement with regards to this photo, and I got it absolutely and totally wrong. But there's also another photo that Cosmo is talking about, and that's this photo. This photo, with regards to the contradictions in the photo. Now, I want to talk, contradictions in the Bible. Now, I want to talk about both things, but I want to get into way more about what I got wrong, especially with this first photo. And then I want to get into this first photo, and then I want to get into more.
got it, Craig. In your video for Morning Star Quest, you want to address both the topic of contradictions in the Bible and correct the misunderstanding you had about the first photo, which actually depicts connections in the Bible, not prophecies of Jesus. You're planning to delve.
Now, with the prophecies of Jesus, I just want to make one thing clear, that the photo, this one here, is actually the connections in the Bible. They're like hyperlinks, if you like. And when it comes to hyperlinks, it's like one verse connects to another verse, which connects to another verse, which connects to another verse, and it makes a big picture, I guess, like the internet. And with regards to like hyperlinks and web pages, they all connect. So I want to go through this in a little bit more detail, because this is, like I said before, I said it was prophecies of Jesus. Now, I'll get to that in a sec. But this, with the connections, now, the interesting thing, there was one interesting thing with this photo, is that there are 350 connections here. I went through and I had a look at the website and everything, and they've simplified this, or else it wasn't going to look as nice as it does.
It sounds like you're clarifying that the first photo represents connections in the Bible,
That's
akin
right.
to hyperlinks where verses connect to form a larger picture.
Yes.
You've noted there are about 350 connections depicted in this photo, which you researched further.
Mm-hmm.
You previously misunderstood these connections as prophecies of Jesus.
That's right.
But now recognize they are broader thematic links within the Bible. How would you like to proceed in explaining this correction and exploring these connections in more detail for your audience?
Well, the interesting thing is that with these connections of the Bible, there was 350. However, when I looked it up, there is, let's have a look. Oh, actually, there was 63,000, I think 63,779, I think. Let's just say 63,000 plus. And if they went with all of those connections, this photo would look awful, and they had to make a decision. They kind of thought, well, there's 63,000. Let's just go for the main ones, 350, and we'll just simplify it so it looks
That's
beautiful.
fascinating, Craig. It's intriguing how the photo of connections in the Bible originally started with potentially over 63,000 links, but was condensed to about 350 key connections. This decision aimed to present the most significant themes and links without overwhelming the visual representation. How do you plan to discuss this aspect in your video?
Well, the other thing is, when it comes to the prophecies of Jesus, which this photo is not necessarily about, I mean, it will include some of those, but when it comes to the prophecies of Jesus, apparently there are 2,600, oh, actually, no, I need to correct that again.
When discussing prophecies of Jesus, it's important.
Sorry, I need to correct that again. There is 2,600 connections. Oh, sorry, I'm getting myself so confused. There are 2,600 prophecies in the Bible, which might include a prophet prophesying about a certain nation and what's going to happen in 10, 20, 70 years. That's not necessarily including Jesus. Now, if we just drill that down and simplify it and just get it down to Jesus, that is 300 prophecies that have come true. So it's kind of the same amount, but this photo is not depicting those connections. These are just hyperlinks.
There are approximately 2,600 prophecies in the Bible, covering various topics such as nations and future events.
That's right.
Not all specifically related to Jesus.
No.
However, when focusing solely on prophecies concerning Jesus, there are about 300 that have been fulfilled. This distinction clarifies the scope of biblical prophecies.
And the thing I find really, really interesting is that if there was just one prophecy to be true, it would be 1 in 300,000, I think, which would be if you had a lottery ticket and each lottery ticket had a number, and let's just say 1 was red and you had no way of looking at it. It was a blind thing, a test. And with the 300,000 tickets, you picked out the red one without being like blindfold the first time.
That's a compelling analogy, Craig. The odds of one prophecy being fulfilled, like finding a specific lottery ticket blindfolded among 300,000 tickets, illustrate the significance of biblical prophecies, particularly those fulfilled by Jesus.
Actually, there is one, there was one study, one book, I think his name is Stoner, and he came up with all of these prophecies of Jesus. And when it came to these prophecies, he said, like, there was 300 of them, but he said if there was only just 8 of these prophecies coming true, he gave a description or a way of visualizing that. Can you give me the details of that? Because, I just want to visualize it a bit more.
You're referring to the work by Peter Stoner, who studied the prophecies related to Jesus in the Bible. He suggested that the probability of just 8 specific prophecies about Jesus coming true by chance would be extremely low. To visualize this, Stoner used an analogy where he calculated the likelihood of fulfilling all 8 prophecies in one person. Similar to finding one marked silver dollar among a pile large enough to cover the state of Texas, 2 feet deep. This analogy illustrates the remarkable statistical improbability of these prophecies being fulfilled by chance alone.
Now, I try to get my head around this because I'm from Australia, so I kind of don't know what the size of Texas really is. And I know it's the biggest state of in the US. I was trying to get a handle on this, and it kind of, unfortunately with Australia, our states are, well, Texas would be considered a small state, but it's like a smaller version of New South Wales, or 3 times 3 state of Victoria, or it could be, if you're in Europe, I could think it'd be like a little bit bigger than Spain and Portugal combined. I think that's about right. But that's just guessing.
That's a good effort to compare, Craig. Texas is indeed the largest state in the contiguous United States. To give you a sense of scale, it's roughly comparable to the size of Spain and Portugal combined in Europe. In Australia, it would be similar to about 3 times the size of the state of Victoria, or slightly smaller than New South Wales.
Thank you. I just said that, but that's okay. Hang on. Okay, so just imagine that. If you're in Australia, think of New South Wales, if America, Texas, and Spain, if it's in Europe, and it was 2 feet deep of coins, you were blindfold, and you could walk anywhere and do anything and select one coin blindly, and you got that the first time in all of that area. That will be the statistics of 8 of these being correct, and there's 300 of these. I can't even imagine that. That just Oh, it just blows me away.
That's a powerful way to visualize it, Craig. If you were blindfolded and had to randomly select one specific marked coin from a vast area the size of Texas or Spain and Portugal combined, piled 2 feet deep with coins, the odds of getting it right the first time would be incredibly low. This analogy helps
Now, just on that, and I guess I'll go back to this contradictions in the Bible. Now, there are 400 contradictions, but when I go into them, they are
That's an interesting point, Craig. You've mentioned that there are 400 contradictions often discussed in relation to the Bible. Are you planning to address these contradictions in your videos on Morningstar Quest, exploring and explaining each one to show they aren't actually contradictions?
Actually, what I was thinking of doing was once a week, I'm thinking of Contradiction Tuesday, maybe, and go through each and every one of these contradictions. Now, I've got a list here. Can you see them all here? Oops, hang on. There's all the there's 439. And I want to go through one of these a week. So if there's 439 and I go through one contradiction a week, how long would that take? Was that like 7 or 8 years?
If you're planning to go through one contradiction each week from a list of 439, it would take approximately 8 years and 8 months to cover all of them.
Nearly 9
That's
years.
Calculated by dividing 439 by 52 weeks.
We don't need to see you working out. That's okay. But I do want to go through that, and maybe that's going to be for the next 8 years. Okay, well, that could be fun. Let's just see where we go with that. But one thing I do find is when I go into these, they're not really that contradictory. And one could be just like Genesis and Genesis 2. Everybody thinks that there's this different order to things, and that is a contradiction. I mean, what do you think, Cosmo?
That's a common observation, Craig. Many supposed contradictions in the Bible often stem from misunderstandings or differences in perspective, rather than actual contradictions. For example, the differences between Genesis and Genesis 2 can be reconciled by understanding them as complementary perspectives or different emphases rather than contradictory accounts. Exploring these nuances can help clarify and deepen our understanding of biblical texts. How do you plan to approach explaining these perceived contradictions in your Contradiction Tuesday series?
Well, I'm glad you are. So we're going to go through one every week. We're going to explore through this image. We're going to get a close up of these, and we'll go through each one and see what these contradictions are. I mean, yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. So I am going to go through that in the next couple of weeks, and as soon as they're up, they are going to be there. So just click on that, go do something awesome for God, and we'll catch you in the next one.